Hi. As Jehovah's Witnesses, when we thought about the day of judgment, we typically thought of Armageddon. If we did not make it through Armageddon, it meant death, as the Watchtower defined it, non-existence. It was all over. For you, anyways. If you died before Armageddon without the hope of being resurrected, it was likewise all over for you. For some witnesses and ex-witnesses, they find a level of comfort in this. It's all over. Nothing for me to worry about anymore. But what if the Watchtower position is wrong? Their position really focuses on us rather than on God or on justice. When does what the Apostle Paul describes happen? I'm going to read you what he describes in Romans 14, verses 7 to 12. For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and rose and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and the living. But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you show contempt for your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then each of us shall give an account of himself to God. Notice in verse 10, it said, we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Verse 11, every knee shall bow to me, every tongue shall confess to God. Verse 12, each of us shall give account of himself to God. Listen to C.S. Lewis's meditations on judgment in his essay in this Fern-seed and Elephants book that we've been reading portions from. This is in his essay, The World's Last Night, where we've been talking about date setting in this. But here is what he says about judgment. Taken by themselves, these considerations might seem to invite a relaxation in our efforts for the good of posterity. He's talking about date setting, not being worried about it being a specific date. But if we remember that what may be upon us at any moment is not merely an end, but a judgment, they should have no such result. And he says, our ancestors had a habit of using the word judgment in this context as if it meant simply punishment. Hence the popular expression, it's a judgment on him. I believe we can sometimes render the thing more vivid to ourselves by taking judgment in a stricter sense, not as the sentence or award, but as the verdict. Someday, and what if this present were the world's last night, an absolute correct verdict, if you like, a perfect critique will be passed on what each of us is. We have all encountered judgments or verdicts on ourselves in this life. Every now and then we discover what our fellow creatures really think of us. I don't, of course, mean what they tell us to our faces. That we usually have to discount. I'm thinking of what we sometimes overhear by accident, or of the opinions about us which our neighbors or employees or subordinates unknowingly reveal in their actions, and of the terrible or lovely judgments artlessly betrayed by children or even animals. Such discoveries can be the bitterest or sweetest experiences we have. But of course, both the bitter and the sweet are limited by our doubt as to the wisdom of those who judge. We always hope that those who so clearly think us cowards or bullies are ignorant and malicious. We always fear that those who trust us or admire us are misled by partiality. I suppose the experience of the final judgment, which may break in upon us at any moment, will be like those little experiences, but magnified to the nth. For it will be infallible judgment. If it is favorable, we shall have no fear. If unfavorable, no hope that it is wrong. We shall not only believe, we shall know beyond doubt in every fiber of our appalled or delighted being that as the Judge has said, so we are, neither more nor less nor other. We shall perhaps even realize that in some dim fashion we could have known it all along. We shall know, and all creation will know too. Our ancestors, our parents, our wives or husbands, our children. The unanswerable, and by then self-evident truth about each will be known to all. I do not find that picture of physical catastrophe, the sign in the clouds, those heavens rolled up like a scroll, help one so much as the naked idea of judgment. We cannot always be excited. We can perhaps train ourselves to ask more and more often how the thing which we are saying or doing, or failing to do, at each moment will look when the irresistible light streams in upon it. That light, which is so different from the light of this world, and yet even now we know just enough of it to take it into account. As witnesses, I would say we think in terms of a crowd almost, because we're thinking of blending in, we're in the organization, or out, we're in the world. Not as an individual standing before the Lord, alone for a true verdict of ourselves. I'm going to link to a video that is the first of a series of 3 that David and I did, called What J.W. Org is Not Telling You About the Judgment Day. And it's based on some discussion of Acts 17, verses 22 to 31. So just follow the links to the next video. So there's three parts to that one. And the second video is one that David was doing from readings from James Orr. This one is called God's Eternal Purpose Defined by Love, but Not Exclude Wrath and Judgment.